we had a speaker coming from the outside world today, and we do. He's here all the way from China by way of Munich. Kirk Cordill is the CEO and Managing Director of BMW in Beijing, China. He is also Vice President of BMW. He is the youngest CEO in the BMW organization. Got to that point by way of Hillsdale College, from which he graduated in 1992, and then the MBA program at Notre Dame in 1996. And then he did a real smart thing. He told the good people who were hiring for BMW that they needed to hire him because he was good and smart and hardworking and committed to learning German. And he can do this whole presentation to you today in German and not miss a beat, although I wouldn't get as much out of it. He's here today. We're really delighted that he's here. Please give him a big welcome.
Doug, how do we get this up on? Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're having a few technical issues here. We'll get them sorted out. It's great to be with you. I'm actually from South Bend. I'm a townie. Went to Mishawaka Marian High School. So it's nice to be back in town today. My background, I love cars, and I'm pretty good with numbers. So I think I landed in a pretty good spot. I have loved cars ever since I was about this tall. I started working in a local dealership when I was 16 years old. My first job was washing cars, and it's kind of a passion I've always followed. You know, when I was in your seat, both coming out of undergrad and then in grad school, you have to make some decisions about where do you want to go and what do you want to do. And when I was coming out of business school, I was doing some of the Wall Street interviews, investment banking, and I had also gotten a couple offers from some of the car companies, being General Motors and Ford. The mentors that I talked to basically said, you know what, Kirk, you love cars. Why don't you stick with what you love? We think you'll have a much more rewarding career. But the thing I couldn't get my head around was working for General Motors or Ford. If I got stuck working on the Focus project, I probably wouldn't be too excited about it. So I really kind of thought to myself, who do I think has exciting product? Who's got a great brand? What company is very well managed? And the company I landed on was BMW. I still get excited about the product. Every time I get a new car, I'm kind of like a little kid. And as far as being a well-run company, it was one of the only automobile companies that was profitable through the global financial crisis. So when I was in your position not so long ago, I sent a cold cover letter to BMW and said, you know, I'd like to come work for your company for these reasons. And one day I got a call from a guy with a pretty heavy German accent. At first I thought, well, maybe it's one of my buddies playing a joke on me, but it wasn't. And so I went out and interviewed with him. But I've been with them now for about 16 years, and I've spent over 9 years working overseas with them. So I've worked in Germany twice, in Munich at the headquarters, and I've been in China now for over 4 years. So it's been a pretty rewarding career, and I have to say, as far as mixing something with your passion, you know, I go to car shows and car races because I love to, not because I have to. And being able to combine something like that, I would say, makes it a lot more enjoyable. So one of the themes I've always talked about was everything you need to know to succeed in international business, you learn from the movie The Wizard of Oz. And just to kind of simplify it down. And I think not only does it apply for international business, but for any type of business or any type of career you're going to go into. Things I'll touch on today, a little bit on my background, which I already talked a little bit about. Why international business and how did I end up in China? Then we'll go through the main themes from The Wizard of Oz, being courage, brain, and a heart, and then a few other things along the way. As far as BMW is recognized as one of the world's most admired companies. It is the top automotive company in the world. If you look at China, as far as most admired brands, BMW ranks #1. Apple is #2. We've done a very good job of establishing the brand in the China market. BMW was started in 1916 as an aircraft engine manufacturer, and the symbol you see on BMW is a propeller against a blue sky, and that's how the company started. As far as the brands, some of you may not know all of this, but it's not just BMW, it also includes Rolls-Royce, it includes the Mini brand as well. So we really go, I would say, from the small car segment all the way up through the very high-end luxury segment. But the main theme is everything we do is premium. One thing you may not know about BMW is that there is a very big focus on sustainability. And this is both on environmental, it's economic, and it's social. BMW is consistently recognized as one of the most sustainable companies in the world. And as far as the Dow Jones Automotive Sustainability Index, BMW has consistently ranked #1. This is our chairman, it's Dr. Reithofer, but he has personally made the commitment to say that we take on the responsibility on these 3 areas as far as sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability throughout the value chain, this means from the beginning as far as designing cars, as far as developing cars, producing cars, and the way we sell the cars. And this is really, I think, different from a lot of other companies and something that we're always, I would say, very proud of. And it's something that is very central within BMW. The strategy for, if we take the environmental strategy, we've really got 4 different areas that we're working on. One is on optimization. Everything kind of comes under this roof of efficient dynamics. The first one is on optimization. So in the current gasoline engines or diesel-powered engines, how do we make them more environmentally friendly? If you look at the engines that we currently are bringing out, they're 25% more fuel efficient than the previous generation. They have 25% less CO2 emissions, and they're 25% more powerful. So a pretty good combination, and I think very rare in the automotive industry as far as being able to get more power but be more environmentally friendly at the same time. We've also got hybrid vehicles that we have out in the market right now, which is really the combination of electric motor and a combustion engine. We've got electric vehicles, which will be coming in the future. I've got a couple slides on that, but it's pretty exciting. They're pretty exciting vehicles. And then we've also developed hydrogen-powered vehicles. So the only tailpipe emission on a hydrogen vehicle is water. But the problem at this point in time is there's really no infrastructure to support hydrogen vehicles, such as being able to go to a gas station and refill the vehicle. Efficient dynamics. So if you take a regular car today, what can you do to make it more environmentally friendly? We've got a number of things that we're doing. One of them, is brake energy regeneration. So when you brake a vehicle, there is energy that is thrown off. And what you would find in a hybrid vehicle or in an all-electric vehicle is that energy is then transmitted back to the battery to recharge the battery. We're putting this in our regular cars already today. We've come up with the tire companies to come up with tires that have reduced rolling resistance. So how do you make a tire more efficient as far as being able to move the car? We've come up with 8-speed transmissions so that there are shorter gear intervals and the drivetrain is more efficient as far as being able to switch the gears and use less power. Another item we have is automatic start-stop function. So when you come to a light, the car shuts off. This is something you normally only find on an electric vehicle or a hybrid. We're putting them on our regular vehicles. It's a little different to get used to the first time you go to a stoplight and the engine shuts off, but it does get started again and goes. And then we've got air vent control based on how much cooling is needed. The vents in the front of the car will change direction to improve the aerodynamics. And the other item that we're coming up with is the twin power turbo technology. What you will see coming from BMW in the future, and right now also, is that we will be going to smaller engines that are turbocharged. One of the biggest drawbacks to turbocharged vehicles is basically an engine is kind of an air pump, and the turbocharger kind of throws more air into it. The biggest drawback is that something called turbo lag, where if you accelerate the car, there's a little bit of a hesitation until the turbo kicks in. We've been able to eliminate that by going to smaller turbos that are used in a tandem fashion so that they spin up faster. But the 328 that is on the market today has a 4-cylinder turbo engine that produces more horsepower than the 1997 M3 did, which was our top performance vehicle at the time. So you can see the improvements in the technology have really come a long way. As far as the hybrids, just to give you an idea, I would say a lot of the hybrids on the market today are probably not very fun cars to drive, and we've taken a little bit of a different tack with that. If you look at the 7 Series hybrid vehicle, this is a very large car, but it's putting out 465 horsepower. It can go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour is basically a 0 to 60 time. It can do sub 5 seconds, so it'll do 4.9 seconds. This is almost as fast as our performance vehicle, being the M3. It's got 15% less fuel consumption than the regular vehicle, and it's got an electric engine that supports the combustion engine. So the cars, we're taking a little bit of a different tack. The cars are still really fun to drive, but they're more environmentally friendly. And to me, this is something that I love. I think the Prius, it's been a very successful car. It's cool technology, but the car I can't get very excited about because it's about as much fun to drive as driving an appliance. It's just not a sexy car, and it's not a fun car to drive, and that's the different take that we're putting on our hybrids. As far as born electric, this is something that's pretty cool. This car on the left-hand side here was just featured in the new Mission Impossible movie, Ghost Protocol. The producers of the movie actually called us and wanted to get a hold of the car, which is different than most car companies, which are placing their cars into the movies. What is different about these cars? These cars were designed from the ground up to be electric vehicles. Most of the electric vehicles on the road today were converted from a regular gasoline or diesel-powered vehicle. These are much, much different. From the design of it, most of the time the batteries are put into the trunks of the vehicle or under the rear seat. We've taken a different tack. If you were to take the frame of the vehicle, the batteries sit between the frame rails, which means that you get much more interior room on the cars, but it also handles a lot better because the weight is at the bottom of the vehicle. We invested a lot of money into a carbon fiber company called SGL Carbon. We used to be involved in the America's Cup sailing boat races, and we helped build a lot of the boats which were carbon fiber. We also used the carbon fiber, was then transferred to the M product vehicles, which are the performance cars. We've taken that a step further. Carbon fiber is more lightweight than aluminum and stronger than aluminum. The issue is that it's more expensive. We invested into a carbon fiber joint venture, meaning we own part of the company, a carbon fiber company owns the other part, but we've come up with new sheets that we can work with. It's more economical, but this is really the first application where we're building a car that is mainly made out of carbon fiber to reduce the weight of the vehicle, which offsets the increased weight from the batteries. If you look at the performance of these vehicles, the i8, which is on the left, has better fuel economy than a Prius, lower CO2 emission, and is as fast as the current M3. It'll do 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. And that combination is pretty cool. So it's environmentally friendly, but it's fun to drive, and it's an extremely sexy vehicle. The i3 is a little bit of a different take, and it's more of what we call the mega city vehicle. If you look at the trends in population, more people are moving into the cities, and the populations of the cities is increasing dramatically. I live in Beijing, China. The population in Beijing is 17 million people. If you take the size of a city like Chicago, it's 6 million people. And especially in Asia, you're seeing the cities grow at a very large rate. As far as financial services, and this is the area that I'm in. So what I do is I run the financial services group for China and Hong Kong. We are one division within BMW. So we have all the different brands being BMW Mini and Rolls-Royce. We also make motorcycles, and then we have the financial services group. And as far as an independent division, we sit alongside the other product lines. And as far as the value chain, we are a part of the value chain. The value chain means what part of the business are you in from start to finish. So BMW is pretty much vertically integrated as far as from the research and development, this means the design of the car, and the engineering, to the production of the car, to the sales and marketing of the car, and then into financial services. Financial services is in more than 50 countries worldwide. The diversification has been, I would say, pretty dramatic. And when you get together at our global meetings, you see people from all over the world, which makes it an interesting place to work. Our portfolio size, as far as money that is managed, our portfolio, we're at 72 billion euro. This is getting pretty close to 100 billion US dollars, so it's a very big portfolio, represents about 70% of the BMW Group's balance sheet. Really, as far as our vision is that we turn customers into fans for BMW Group mobility. We have 3.2 million customers. We finance approximately almost half of the vehicles sold by the group. And as far as a profit contribution, we return 36% return on equity. Equity is the money that's invested into the business. So if you would think about it, it'd be like the money you put into the bank. We're returning 36% on that money every year. As far as how things are changing, your generation, I think, is looking at cars probably a lot differently than my grandparents' generation did. Back in my grandparents' generation, a lot of people said, well, if we have cash, we can't afford the car, or if we don't have cash, we can't afford the car. But it was very much about ownership and very much a status symbol. It then moved on to, okay, well, it's socially acceptable to finance a car and drive it around. It then came into leasing, where you don't necessarily have to own the vehicle. The finance company does. You use it for 3 years. And what you're seeing now are companies like Zipcar that are around the country, where you basically pay a membership fee. You can go to any car that's parked around the city, open it up using either your iPhone or an RFID card, and use it for a couple hours and return it. And that's where we see, we don't think that the usage model is going to replace everything, but we need to be adaptable into that. And there's a large customer interface as far as what we're doing, from the sales side all the way through the financial information that people have, and all the way through the end as far as the disposal of the vehicle. Why China? Why would somebody from South Bend, Indiana go to work in China? The best piece of advice I ever got was go where there's growth, because where there is growth, there is opportunity. This is one reason I went into the financial services division of BMW. When I went in back in 1996, it was growing a lot. I got a lot of opportunities that I probably would not have had otherwise. China represents the same thing. China is growing immensely. In 2004, China was the 11th largest market for BMW globally. In 2008, it was number 5. In 2010, it was number 3. And year to date for 2012, it is number 1. It has overtaken both Germany and the US as far as the largest BMW market globally. And I have to say, when you're looking at opportunities career-wise, I would really say that advice I got as far as go where there's growth, because where there's growth, there is opportunity, holds very true. So that's how I wound up in China. There's been a lot in the media lately about a big slowdown in China. And I've gotten a lot of questions from people saying, well, are things really as bad as it's reported in the media? Things are slowing down, but they're slowing down to a rate of probably 7.5% GDP growth per year. If we had 7.5% GDP growth in the US right now, we'd probably all be dancing on the stage because that would be a very big deal. We're talking about 1% to 2% right now. I don't see the market imploding. I think the media probably reports things a little bit more negatively than they actually are. The growth that we've seen in the market so far this year, which is the right-hand chart, is that our sales are up 31% over 2011. So we still see a growth mode, although it is slowing down from the rates of growth we had in the past. Okay, now how to succeed in business or how to succeed in international business. I think the first piece of advice is everything you need to know about success has already been written. And somebody told me this one time, and it really is true. There are a lot of new books that come on the market about success, but I think the main principles or tenets of them are all the same. I would say it's old wine in a new bottle. And that's one thing to realize. The biggest thing that I think runs through these books on success is think about your goals and then write them down. And once you put these goals, you commit them to paper or to memory or in your iPad. I got to tell you, once you put that goal down, it becomes very powerful. And your thoughts are also extremely powerful. The power of this, I cannot tell you enough. I was sitting on, it was about 7 years ago, again writing down some goals about where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And one of them was I wanted to be one of the CEOs in the BMW group by the time I was 40. I hit that goal. Another goal was to hit vice president within the German company. Hit that goal as well. Now it's time to start sitting down and writing some other goals. But once you commit these things, and the part about it is it makes you organize your thoughts, and once you put them down to paper, you always go back to them, and it can help you along the way as far as making your choices. I was offered a job back in 2007, which was a pretty good job, but it didn't fit to the goal that I'd written down, and I turned it down. And about 6 months later, the job that I'd written down as far as one of my goals actually came up as an opportunity. But it helped guide me. It helped guide me to make those decisions. Does an international assignment fit with your goal? I think an international assignment sounds very glamorous, but I have to tell you, the glamour stops when you get off the plane. You get a one-way ticket to a country where you don't know the language and you step off the plane and you've got to do a job. There's a lot of pressure there. But what it can do is, depending on your profession, it can help move your career along. One of the things I realized in the automotive industry was getting an international assignment was like getting your ticket punched for going into senior management. And how you come across those assignments varies. But I will tell you that they're not easy to come by. Mine came across, I think, back in 1997, so it was about a year out of Notre Dame, and the CFO from Germany had come over a couple times. Guy's name is Johann. He's about 6'3", 6'4", buff, bald, goatee. He's kind of an intimidating guy. But we got along, and he said to me one day, he said, I'd be willing to bring you over to Munich for a few months to work in my group over there. I can't promise you anything on the backside as far as coming back to the U.S., but I think it would be a good opportunity for you. And being a little naive, I said, or naive or courageous, one of the two, I said, all right, well, yeah, I'll jump on a plane, I'll come over there. I got a one-way ticket to Munich, and I knew no German at the time. But it ended up working out very well. I ended up staying 2 years, and I think the biggest thing about that is you have to have your mind open to opportunities when they come along, and you have to be very open to taking them. As far as the international assignment itself, like I said, it sounds glamorous, but it's a lot of hard work. I will tell you that the hours are longer than what you would have here in your home country or wherever your home country is, because it takes you longer to get things done. The language is different, the business culture is different, the social culture is different, and you have to step back from each situation and think about it a little bit longer as far as, well, how am I going to get this done? How does it work here? What's going to happen? And I think this is where the analytical and problem-solving skills are essential. I think, I was a finance major, both undergrad and also for my MBA. But what I also got interested in from one of my freshman year studies was philosophy. So philosophy became my minor. Went overseas, studied at Oxford for a little while. It's been a fantastic combination because it taught me to learn or to look at situations differently. And it teaches you to step back and maybe think about things differently than maybe you would have been taught within the business school itself. We've got 2 products right now in China that are nowhere else in the world. They're not developed, they weren't implemented anywhere else in the world. But it was part of that philosophy study that I had in training as far as coming back and taking a look at a problem a little bit differently and being able to come up with a creative solution. And that's one of the things as far as being a manager, one of your goals is to produce results. And you can't have a victim mentality about it. You have to come up with solutions. But that philosophy study really helped me in that area. It's that ability to make something out of nothing. That is what can set you apart from other people. As far as courage, I would say confidence is everything in life. You know, and if you remember the old Austin Powers movies, he talked about, you know, Dr. Evil stole his mojo. Well, that can happen to any of us. And once you lose your mojo, I got to tell you, you're kind of going into a spiral, a downward spiral. It doesn't matter whether it's work, you know, studies, your love life, or sports. But if you lose your self-confidence, you're going to be in a bad way. And you have to have that confidence to be able to get things done. You know, we talked about the glamour stopping when you get off the plane. You're not in Kansas anymore. And as far as making your way through life, you know, hazing is not just for college anymore. When I first went over to Germany, they basically stuck me in the factory workers' dorm. It kind of set me up there. It wasn't a nice place to live. But they wanted to see how badly do you want to be here? How badly do you want to work here? And as far as figuring that out, you know, you have to show that you're going to go above and beyond what is required to get things done. And it's not a vacation. You're there to produce. We talked about the hours before. You know, it's great to be able to go skiing in the Alps on the weekend. It's, you know, fun to be able to jump down to Hong Kong and have a weekend there. But the biggest thing is you're there to produce results. And I will tell you, the hours that I have worked have been much longer than probably would have been in my home country. As far as your attitude, you know, how do you look at this opportunity? How do you look at a different country? If you start to make judgments on this is right or wrong, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You really have to be, I would say, very open and very tolerant and just say it's not right or wrong, it's just different. And there are certain things that will drive you crazy on a daily basis, but you cannot be judgmental about it. You have to be very open-minded about it. And don't forget your moral compass. I think, you know, being at Notre Dame, one of the things that I really loved about it was the school stands for something. And I think generally when you meet people from Notre Dame, you can expect that there are a certain character quality. And when you get into international business, there are going to be things that come up. And the best piece of advice I ever received on this one was, if you would be embarrassed to tell your family or friends about what you did, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. And the consequences can be pretty big on an international basis. And the principles are the same as far as the business, but you can't take something that worked in the US and copy-paste into China. It's just not going to work. One of the reasons I am in China is because I do have the experience, but we've got a wonderful, talented group of people on the ground, as far as our local associates, that really help take these principles or ideas and tailor them to the local market. As far as saying, what if we did this? And they'll look at me and go, well, yeah, we probably could do that, but change this and this and this, and we think it'll work. And that's really where you have to go from, as far as how do you take things, the basic principles, but tailor them to a certain situation. I think the other thing I've got up here are the ruby slippers and the Wicked Witch of the West. I have to tell you, when you land overseas, there are going to be some people like the Lollipop Guild that are very happy to see you there, and there are going to be other people like the Wicked Witch of the West. You got the ruby slippers, and she's a little pissed off about it. And there are going to be some people that are not going to be so happy to see you there. You got the job that they wanted, and you have to watch your back a little bit on that. As far as heart, my biggest piece of advice is do what you love, because it's going to show. My passion is cars, it always has been, and I feel very fortunate that I was able to combine a passion with a profession. I still get excited getting up in the morning and doing different things and going to different areas. Probably the best day of work I have ever had was when I was still in the U.S. I got promoted to the head of vehicle sales for the U.S. They sent me down to our factory in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and they have a driving school there. But they lined up every model of BMW. They gave me a driving instructor and said, "This is your day. You have to go out and drive every BMW on the racetrack and on the off-road tracks. But that's your day." And to me, you couldn't have paid me enough money to go do that. I mean, it was just a fantastic experience. And other things, as far as, you meet some interesting people along the way that also, if they love what they do, you can pick up on it pretty quickly. One of the guys that I do work with, he's the head of design for Mini. So he's the head of design for all the Minis that are made. And you sit in a meeting with this guy and he will just sketch the whole time. He will be looking at you, but he will be sketching. And I said, "Anders, what do you really love about your job?" And he said, "I have wanted to be a car designer since I was 3 years old." And I said, "Well, I think you're probably in the right job. But if you have that passion, people can pick up on it immediately if you really love what you do." Your ability to connect with people is everything. One of the things I said as far as being a manager is you have to produce results. The second piece is it's growing people. And I think that is the piece that is the most often overlooked. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if you cannot communicate, if you cannot connect with other people, you're not going to go very far. You have to be able to relate your ideas. I think Dale Carnegie said it best when he said, "Seek first to understand, then be understood." That ability those interpersonal skills and the ability to connect is going to make a difference along the way. The things that we do in that area, I think, make all the difference in the world. One of the best things about doing international business, I can tell you, is you meet some wonderful people. You really have to have a love for people, though, as well. You meet some real jerks as well, but you can meet those jerks here in South Bend, Indiana, also. But you meet some wonderful people, and you can have some wonderful experiences. This idea of organizational development, which is kind of about the soft side as far as building a culture within a company, is something that we focus a lot on. In China, it is not uncommon that people can leave the company and get a 20 to 30% raise working somewhere else. So really what we focused on is trying to build a place where people like to come to work. And we focus a lot on team building activities. We focus on communication, career development. And one of the things we've done recently is we've taken people more your age in the company and kind of built an engagement team. At this point, I'm becoming a middle-aged guy. But we've taken a team of people that are probably in their early 20s and came up with an engagement team. Tell us what you want to do. What do you want to do for team building activities? What do you want to go do? Well, their first idea is, badminton's pretty popular in China. Let's have a badminton tournament within the company. These are things I would have never thought of. But you have to build that camaraderie and really focus on the team building. We've done dragon boat races, which are the big long boats that look like dragons. You have to paddle. We rented out the Olympic Center in Beijing. It was a lot of fun. I don't know in the U.S. that we would have focused as much on these team building activities, but it is something that we have focused very much on in China, and trying to make it a place where really people like to come to work and they feel like they make a difference. Trust and respect local traditions, customs, and people. Get to know the local culture. If you can learn the language, it will build you a lot of respect. And I think the other point to remember is that when you're overseas, you're a guest. Be on good behavior. I think if you can remember back to the time when we were all small, if you went over and played at your buddy's place and he acted up, and the parents got mad, they would send you home. It's kind of like that when you're doing business internationally. Be on your best behavior. Don't take the best toys in the sandbox, and play fair. Generally, I would say overseas people tend to take a long-term view on things, and very much getting to know you as a person is extremely important. I would say in the US, we have a tendency to get to the point pretty quickly. I would say both in Europe and in Asia, people want to get to know you as a person before they will do business with you. And this is something that I also had to learn. There have been very long lunches, there have been very long dinners where we didn't talk business at all. What we talked about were personal things, interest, family, those types of things, but they really want to get to know you as a person before they do business with you. And that is something that is different from the US. And the last point really is you'll meet wonderful people that will make it all worth it. The experiences that I've had, the people that I've met have truly been some of the most rewarding I could have ever imagined. And that is really, I would say, the trade-off for the longer hours and having to think a little bit more about how to get things done. You know, you are a long way away from family and friends, but the people you meet, the experiences you can have are absolutely fantastic. I think, you know, as far as summing things up, you know, whether you go into business or not, Notre Dame has a world-class business program. So if you do decide to go into that, I think you can have a very bright future. We talked a little bit about how I studied philosophy, and I would encourage you, if you do go in business, take something that's a little bit different than business as far as a minor or do a double major, but it'll teach you to think a little bit differently. And it'll teach you to think outside the box, and it can help you out along the way. Learn a foreign language. Don't be the stereotypical American. I didn't take languages very seriously when I was in college, and I wish I had. Because I have to tell you, when you get overseas and you're working full-time and you're having to learn a foreign language, it's not a lot of fun. But you do get through it. It's much easier to do it at your age, and I think it can open a lot for you. I will also tell you, if you go into countries where you don't speak the local language, but they know you're bilingual, it buys you a lot of credibility with them. Because they say, okay, he's not the ordinary guy out of the US where he only speaks English. He can get by in a different language. As far as entrepreneurship, you know, going into a major corporation is not the only way to do things in business. There are a lot of successful entrepreneurs out there. South Bend is not Silicon Valley, I'll give you that. But there were a couple books written recently that talked about some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world are within the Amish culture. And you're right next door to Amish country. But I have to say the thesis out of the book was interesting. Also, if you look over in Elkhart, Indiana, they are the recreational vehicle capital of the world. But at one point in time, that was very similar to Silicon Valley back in the 50s and 60s. And there are a lot of self-made people over there. There are things you can reach out to around here and learn a lot from. They're very different from what you may normally be used to. As far as things that I've done outside of, I would say, my normal studies that really did help. One was Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie's probably getting a little bit old right now as far as the material, but I have to say the basic themes are exactly applicable to any time or any day. You have to be able to get along with people, and if you want to influence people or get your thoughts across, you have to be able to connect with people. And the other one, and I took this here, and it was through the alumni area with Kathleen Sullivan, was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And again, I think the major thing out of this course was it made you sit down and think about what is important in my life, what are the things I want to achieve, and commit those down in some tangible form and to move on from there. So, a little bit about myself, my background, my passions, how I've been able to turn that into a profession, and a little bit about international business. I have to say, when I was sitting in your seat a while ago, you know, international business was not something that was on the top of my the top of my list. But it's something that I would say I'm the accidental international business person. Opportunities came up, I took advantage of them, and it's been a wonderful ride. I've really enjoyed it. And I've seen things, done things, met people that I never could have imagined before. So that's it for today. Are there any questions? Yes. I'm still single, so I have not moved with family, and that has probably been one of the tough things. It is not impossible to do, but it certainly does make it harder. I think the advantages of the people that I have seen move with family is that you have a support network that moves with you. So when you go home at night, you have familiar and friendly places or faces that can be your support network. I think the disadvantage that you can have is when you go home, you may have had a bad day that is somewhat related to being in a foreign culture, and they may have had one as well, because there certainly is an adjustment. What I've seen from the people that have moved around with children is that the children are certainly having an experience that none of us have probably, not many of us have had before, where they're going to an international school, they're learning the language, and they're having experiences that a lot of other people don't have. And I think from your child perspective, it can certainly help them getting into college as well, because it is certainly a differentiator.
You talked about kind of the really separate effects. How's that being an American and being the VP of I would see like nationalist, not nationalist, but prideful German company?
No, that's a good point. I am a little bit of an anomaly in that standpoint, but I have learned the language pretty well. I do have to represent the company in certain events. I think 3 weeks ago I was at the German ambassador's residence in Beijing, and they basically had the head of Siemens, the head of ThyssenKrupp, the head of Commerzbank, the head of Deutsche Bank, and the guy that started Roland Berger Consultancy. If I didn't know the language, I would have been a fish out of water, to be honest with you. But if you can learn that language, that certainly helps you. And yes, there are certain instances where I do have to go represent the company within the German business community or within, with the German ambassador. You do have to walk a fine line there. But it's something that's not impossible, and I think, companies in general are becoming more international. So if I look at our Chinese colleagues in our company, I hope they look at me and say, I can have a fantastic career with BMW, because this guy's not German, but he's an American running a German company in China. So I think that can also send a positive message.
I know about all 7 turned down a job, but is there a job offer out there that you need
Boy, that's a tough one. Who knows? Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't.
How did BMW establish its brand in China? Does it face any competition from local manufacturers?
Yeah, within China, the interpretation for BMW in Chinese is Baoma, which means fast horse. So as far as we were able to take the BMW name, but come up with a good local interpretation of it. As far as the competition from other manufacturers, certainly, actually Audi is #1 in China. Audi started producing cars there back in the 80s with Volkswagen. So we had a little bit of a later start. We started in 2003, but I think we've tried very much to localize the brand through a number of things. We have a joint venture with one of the Chinese car companies. The finance company is also a joint venture with our local partner. The focus on corporate social responsibility is very high, as far as we set up something called the Warm Heart Fund. And really the idea there is we need to give something back to the community that has also helped make us very successful. As far as, we're doing sponsorship for the Chinese Olympic team, and we've tried very much to localize management as well. There are a lot of companies there that will, if you look at their senior management, it's all foreign, it's all expats. If you take a look at our company, including myself, I think we're at about 5% of the total company is our expats or foreigners, which is very, very low. And that's something else where we've made a conscious decision in that area. I would say you have to make the decision. You either promote somebody at an age where you might not be comfortable with it, or you bring in somebody from the outside to be able to perform that position. We've also structured our expat positions a little bit differently, where we've brought in some of them as consultants or mentors for our local managers, which has also helped, because then you make it more sustainable, I would say, as far as coaching and mentoring our local managers from people that are more experienced, but they're serving as a consultant to them and in some respects may be reporting to them. So those are the ways we've really tried to localize the brand and be successful in that way. And I think for the most part it has been the right way to do it.
Anything specifically that you did that helped you move to upper management so quickly?
Well, I think there are a couple things. I think, go where there's growth, because where there's growth, there's opportunity. I probably got promotions and had more opportunities at a younger age because I went into the financial services division, which was on a high growth curve at the time, and also going into China. China was a market where I didn't hold my hand up and say, I want to go there. I got called into the corner office one day, and they said, listen, we've got some issues in China right now as far as getting the financial services company going. We think you're the right guy. They said, as far as being, you've proven yourself as one of the few people that can perform internationally, because I worked in a lot of different markets within Europe and also in Asia. I was based out of Munich, but did a lot of those areas. You've proven yourself to produce results no matter where you are, and you've handled political situations very well. And it's that ability to create something out of nothing, but also you have to choose the opportunities where there's growth in those areas that can certainly help speed your career along. I think those are the major factors.
What were some of the cultural differences that made your transition to Germany or China, and how did you get through it?
Well, you kind of had to sit back for a few months and observe a lot about how things actually work. I'll take the meeting environment as one within the business culture. Meetings in Germany are simply a approval process for what's already been pre-discussed. So if you're going to have a meeting in Germany, you go have a pre-meeting with everybody that's going to be in that meeting to get their approval before you actually have the meeting. If you don't do that, they're going to take it as a personal affront, and you're not going to get approval in the meeting. Whereas in the US, you would call the meeting, and you would have more of a discussion through that meeting about actually whether it's going to be approved or denied. But that was something you kind of had to sit back and learn a little bit. The other thing is the German business culture is very much planning oriented. So they will plan things 120% and then get started, which works very well for industries where you have a long lead time. So it works well for cars. It can work well in some of the pharmaceuticals. If you look at the American, if you look at the American business model, we probably get to 70 or 80% of planning things out. We say, all right, well, let's get going, and we'll figure the rest out as we go. And that tends to work better in tech and in the services. I would say Hollywood is also a staple of American industry, very creative. But those business models work well for different industries, It was something that I did have to learn, though. And the logic is very deductive logic, where we may say, well, there are 3 realistic possibilities. We'll just start with those. You have to think of every possible solution and then come up with criteria. It's very rational and deductive logic as far as saying, well, we came down to these 3 based on these criteria, and then you take those 3 and come up with more criteria and knock them down again. But that's also where philosophy helped me as far as logic and rationale, as far as being able to go through that.
What kind of person like they tend to hire for international systems?
I think it varies quite a bit. The question was, what type of people does a company tend to hire for international business? I think there are 2 ways, you can get started in international business. One is you either start with the company in your home country and you're identified as a top performer, and then they may give you an opportunity to go overseas. The other way would be to go to that other market and try to get an opportunity there. The second solution probably gets you internationally more quickly, but there are certain training programs as well, and we have a few of them, where they will rotate people through Munich or through different parts of the organization with an eye for having the possibility of having a long-term career. I think the ability to fit into different environments is important. You have to have proven yourself. Obviously, from coming out of college, your grades are going to be your first step in. But the ability to get things done, and is this somebody that's going to be able to operate in different environments, are probably the biggest things. How are their people skills? Are they going to be able to interact with other cultures well? And are they going to be somebody that can produce results as well?
Earlier in the presentation, you were talking about that feature where the BMWs, the engine shut off when you stopped a little bit. Like, how would that handle a situation when you're in like a big city in New York City, or like you're in gridlock, would it just keep shutting on and off like repeatedly? Wouldn't that be like bad though, if you have an engine that keeps like rebooting?
Well, there's a manual override. So right next to the ignition, we actually have an ignition button. You can turn off the feature, and the car starts back up when you let off the brake. So, if you're anticipating a light change, you can let off the brake and you get it started faster. If you are in a big stop and start situation, which is probably where you're going to want to reduce your emissions, you'd leave it on. But if you wanted to manually override it, there's a button right below the ignition button that'll manually override it, and the car just keeps running then.
Do you foresee yourself staying in China for like long term, or do you want to get back to the U.S., or do you have any plans in that area?
Well, I've been this stretch. I was in Germany for 3 years, and then I went to China, and that's been over 4 years. And by the time I'm done, so that's 7 years in total. By the time my contract ends, it'll probably be close to 9. And I think at that point, it's probably time to come home again. I'll be very honest. I've got aging parents, and it'd be nice to spend some time with them as well, because it is, right now it's between a 13 or 14-hour flight to get home, and it's a little long for a weekend visit. But certainly after that, I'd be very open to going international again. Yeah. Yes.
Are there specific kinds of engineers that BMW is looking to hire, or they kind of hire across the board in that regard?
They pretty much hire across the board. I think the greatest need right now is in the new technologies, being carbon fiber and also in battery. BMW took the decision to make their own batteries rather than sourcing them from a battery maker, which is kind of different than a lot of what the other manufacturers are doing. So as far as the areas of greatest need, I would say probably in those 2 areas, somebody that's knows carbon fiber or can work with carbon fiber, and also probably in the battery technology area, which we're also going to be providing an 8-year warranty on the batteries. That's been one of the biggest questions as far as how long do the batteries last, and how much do you stand behind them. And that's one area where we've taken a different view.
We probably have time for one more question. Do we have one? What models do you have?
Well, I have to say I'm very economically or environmentally friendly. I have the 750 Li hybrid, so and it's a fantastic car. So it's a good car. So, well, thank you very much. It's been an honor to be with you today.